I'm Eugene McCarthy, born in May 13th, 1947. I was born in Somerville. I was raised in Lexington, Massachusetts. While we were in high school, Vietnam was raging at the time, and everybody you knew was going to Vietnam. They had a draft back then. You had to register for the draft at 18, and I went down to Woburn, Mass, which is the next town over, signed up, filled out all the papers for the draft. And my girlfriend, soon to be my wife, and I talked about, I didn't want to go to Vietnam. I go to Vietnam, I'm dead.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a SEAL. That was my goal for the military. I wanted to be a SEAL. Actually, what I talked to was a lieutenant and a first-class petty officer who were they run the unit, and no recruiting officer. And so they were kind of telling you what it's like, what life is like aboard a submarine. And both of them served on nukes, so and then, as I was leaving, I saw Dougie Tosio's cousin, who had just gotten off active duty. And I stopped him and said, "Hey, tell me a little bit about what it's like, And he said, "Well, I'm on the Thermidor out of New London." And he said, "This is what it's like, and this is what we do, and this is life on a submarine." And so I signed up for the reserve unit, went back in and signed up for that unit.
What year was that?
That was 66, October 10th, 1966.
And that was it? That was the beginning of the journey?
That was the beginning of the journey. I didn't want to go on the nukes, because what everybody's telling me, you go on a nuke, it's like being in the surface Navy. A lot of this, a lot of that, a lot of rules, regulations, But you go on a conventional boat, diesel electric, that's the Navy loves you, and you can do whatever you want.
Nice.
And we didn't have to dress according to dress code, and I wear flip flops and shorts,
Nice.
On watch, and so he said, it was pretty loose. Being aboard a conventional boat. We did all of that stuff in reserve training, but then you got to go to preliminary sub school, which is 2 weeks, and it's kind of like if you went into the surface Navy, surface unit, you went to 2 weeks of boot camp, and that was your boot camp. So this was our boot camp. Submarine school, and they called it submarine school so that we wouldn't be, we were boot camp.
Yeah.
But one day during the 2 weeks, the Marines come over, take us out, give us drills. But the rest of the time, we're getting into the submarine Navy. They're teaching us about the boats, what neutral buoyancy and negative buoyancy and positive buoyancy, what happens when a submarine submerges, what life is like on a submarine, conventional and nuclear. And middle to the end of January, I went to 8 weeks of submarine school. And did well.
Mm.
Top of my class. Honor man in my class. And what do I get for that? I get to choose where my final duty station would be. Huh. I mean, when they say you can choose your final duty station, that was you chose it. You've noticed if you've seen any pictures of the Cutlass, it did not have 478 on its sail.
Yeah.
We were a very secret boat.
Mm-hmm.
We did secret things.
Nice.
One of the things I had to sign a 50-year non-disclosure agreement. One thing was 30 years, but the other was, there was one of them that was 50. I never even disclosed that what we did
Mm-hmm.
to my first wife.
Wow.
When I went aboard the Cutlass, I started out in the engine rooms. On January 23rd, we had an engine failure. Had a engine number one. I was like a helper, not the oiler. There were three of us. There was the engineman, the oiler, which I was being trained to be, and myself. And the engine went into overspeed. The engineman on duty didn't know what to do. And just fortunately, we were 15 feet away from one of the chief enginemen. I can't remember his name right now, but I met his wife quite a few years ago, and I thanked her and the kids because he pretty much saved us, because that engine was ready to go.
Right.
And it was overspeed, but he ran in, went behind the engine, which is glowing by now, shut off the fuel valve. Had Fowler, who was the engineman on, had he known at the time or realized it, think quick enough, he would have done that, and it wouldn't have been so bad. The first part of the story is the Soviets.
Okay.
When we headed to the Med, on our way over across the pond, we they diverted us to observe Russian naval operations. What it was they had a whole bunch of trawler-looking ships, and they were doing stuff. And the Navy didn't know what it was. Nobody knew what it was. So we went to watch, but we're a long way away. So they didn't really know we were there. Submarine on the surface, from a long distance, you can't see it because it's so low.
Yeah.
It's like looking for a speedboat out 50 miles away. As we were heading to the Mediterranean, we're just leaving Norfolk, Virginia. The Russians lost a submarine in the Pacific off the coast of Hawaii, and they blamed the U.S. So here we are, we're headed across the Atlantic, and now we're looking at these Russian ships doing some kind of maneuver, and we didn't know it. Anyway, now we're off into the Mediterranean, and we were diverted over to the Eastern Med. And we didn't know it at the time, but what we ran into was the Russians, the Soviet Union's first coordinated anti-submarine training exercise that they had done since the Second World War, the first one.
Wow.
And so we're watching all this stuff that they're doing, and we're kind of going into the middle of it and seeing what's going on, and boom, all of a sudden they realize we're there. And we're in the middle of it. But what we found out was, you know, their sonar wasn't that good. So we could move among them submerged without any problem. But we found out that their visual and their radar was pretty damn good.
Uh-oh.
And they'd see us stick our scope up or stick our stack up or snorkel to start the engines, to charge the batteries, because that's what we used to do a lot.
Right.
We'd run on the one engine running and charge the batteries and ventilate the boat, which would bring oxygen in, so we could stay submerged a lot longer. We had another 2 days, depending upon how fast we were running, because we had to charge the batteries. They started coming at us. Every time we stuck up the scope or the snorkel, they just started coming at us. And we had to go down deeper, and they really started concentrating on us. And over the course of 2 weeks, we were getting less and less air. And what happens is, when you get an engine running, you get your snorkel up and you get your engine running, and we got to go down, the snorkel closes. We're not taking in any air. The engine's sucking all the air out of the boat. It can't discharge anywhere, so all the smoke's going into the boat.
Oh my God.
So it's getting pretty bad in there. Right? And I heard flood negative. And I'm not getting anything out of negative. And I turned and I said to the diving officer, I said, I'm not getting anything out of negative. There's no venting on negative. And he just kind of, he wasn't a normal diving officer. One of the guys that I could tell, you know, he was chief of the boat. And all those guys, they all train for it, but they don't do it all the time. Because when you qualify on submarines, you qualify for every station. I could do every job on that the enlisted man is required to do.
Nice.
I train for every one of them. That's how you get your dolphins.
Right.
And the officers do the same thing, and the chiefs also train for officers' responsibilities. So he's trained as a diving officer. And so I knew we had to do it, because it goes, collision alarms going off, and we're just kind of going down. And so I tried to push by him to pull the lever, little hydraulic lever, you pull it, and opens the valve so that the negative floods, and I can sense it. And as I'm doing that, the chief who's on the hydraulic manifold gets over and pulls it. And then we start just dropping like a rock. But as that's happening, I'm looking up in the overhead and I'm seeing the bow of the ship come right through it and the water pouring in. That's my brain is seeing that. And so I check, make sure that the hatch is closed on the dogs, and the hatch into the, after battery's closed, it's on the dogs. And then I check, okay, we're venting negative, okay, and I can feel it. We're going down like an elevator, you know, an express elevator.
Yeah.
Just we're going down. And then it kind of got my wits about me, and I walked up, checked to make sure that it was on the dogs. walked down, and somebody was already checking. I could see through the window there. You could see through, and I could see somebody was there checking. But that was a scary time. That was scary. And I'm right below where the captain's standing, so anything he says, I can hear it. And he says, the weapons officer, he's, normally it would be him that pushes the button to fire the torpedo. And the captain says, no, stand back, I will do this. If we have to fire, it's my responsibility. Because he was going to do it. It had to be done. And he didn't want to risk the guy delaying and not doing it. You know, well, you sure, Captain? Oh.
Yeah. Can I ask real fast? So the ship that came over you, was that a Soviet?
That was a Soviet. They had tailed us down into this area.
Gotcha.
No, and actually, they saw the carrier coming in the Kennedy, so they all got into that area. And we're running, and they ran one right down in between us. We found all this out later. The captain told us because he's there watching it through the scope. Later on, I think it was the next watch. I can't remember when it was, but Jimmy Stroud, who was a first-class torpedoman, walked up to me. I was home watching. He walked up and he said, "Thank you. You saved our lives." Another, Charlie Horton, another long-time, he was a second-class engineman, long-time submariner, came up and said, "Thank you. You saved our lives." And a few other of the senior, long-time submariners came in. As the talk went around about what happened, they're all coming up thanking me. Because had I not done that, I might not be here.
So in your time, 67 to 68, you guys lost the Scorpion. Did you know anybody on the Scorpion?
We had aboard us when I was first aboard around December time. There was big talk about this guy that was running down the pier, yelling for the Scorpion to stop. Yeah, here I am. I'm coming. Right. He was a sonarman, and he missed movement. Scorpion's off, headed down out to sea, and he's running down the pier. And anyway, he got assigned to the Cutlass. Just before we were sent over to the Eastern Mediterranean to go through what we went through. We had done a few little exercises with the British and the French and now we were headed into Naples. On our way into Naples, the Scorpion was on their way out. Well, it just so happened that our captain and their captain were roommates at the academy. So they're on the radio together, talking, and the captain of the Scorpion says, "Hey, I got your favorite movie. You want it?" Oh, captain says, "Of course I want it. Here, what do you got?" So they're talking about what movies they got. So we're swapping all the movies. So we pulled alongside of each other, and we swapped the movies. And then they headed off, and we went into Naples. And I got my Dolphins, because I had qualified every enlisted position on the boat. Even the electricians were throwing the sticks. And so I was qualified every position on the submarine that enlisted man stands. So I got my office. And we got out of that, and now we're in the May, and we left Naples, go into what we had to do, and over in the Eastern Med, and the Soviets got us, and here I am on my 21st birthday, dodging Soviet ships. And when they had the sub-miss, remember I told you that we got a radio message from the surface and we couldn't because Soviets were all around? And they told us to, and we told the Independence to notify Subline 8 that we were okay. Well, Scorpion was also in Subline 8. And when we got back into Naples, because right after that we went back to Naples, they set up we were told that the Scorpion was down. And Scorpion was missing. You know, I think at that time they actually knew she was down. She was gone because they heard it. They've got listening stations all over the Atlantic and the Pacific, so they hear everything that happens. Captain farts, they hear it. Wow. His name was Bill Angel. And I often think about him, that I believe that we were on our way back. We were at sea when we heard that the Scorpion had gone down. And Bill was asleep. And the guy, we called him Buddha, I can't remember, he was a torpedoman, I can't remember his name. I knew it, but I can't come back to me right now. Ask somebody else, should I wake him up? And they said, no, just let him sleep. And then somebody said, you should wake him up. And then one of the officers came back and woke him up and told him. Right at that moment is what I was told by the guys who were there in the after torpedo. There wasn't much of an impact. But he was sitting down, he went up to breakfast, and he was sitting down having breakfast, and it was like all of a sudden it hit him. I shouldn't be doing this. I should be dead. I'm being given, I can't believe it. I made a mistake, but I'm alive. I wasn't punished, they were. You know, he goes through all of this. The corpsman came in and sat with him and asked him, you know, you want any medication to calm you down? You know. But he was okay with it, and then after a while we started talking about it. And he talked about some of the guys that were dead, gone. January 23rd, we had our engine explode, go up. But also, the North Koreans captured the USS Pueblo.
Is that common knowledge?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was to us.
Yeah.
The USS Pueblo was a spy ship. Actually, what it was electronics gathering. It gathered all the signals from all over, listened to the messages, and just a bunch of geeks on the boat, a bunch of Marines protecting them, and some sailors sailing it. And they North Koreans claimed they were in North Korean waters, and they grabbed them. And there was a little bit of fight that went on, but wasn't too much.
Were they?
Huh?
Were they?
No.
They were not in North Korean water. Okay.
No, North Korea, they were just complaining that they were there listening. When we were on our way over across the Med, to the Med, myself, the Jimmy Stroud from the forward torpedo room, he was in charge of the forward torpedo room, he was senior torpedo man and two other enlisted men were called to the wardroom. And we were told that we had to do what had happened. We had heard it because I stand watched by radio, so I knew what was happening. And they called us, these four enlisted men, along with the officers that would be involved, into the wardroom, and the captain and the XO briefed us on what they had been told up in fleet, in the squadron, that we were to prepare a rescue mission to go and get the sailors, the crew of the Pueblo. The reason we were chosen was we had been so successful in our insertion of SEALs, and nobody knew where we were. You couldn't find us. When we were in the Med, we did a few things to kind of check it out if we could do it, see if we could do it. One was we got underneath, or right behind a freighter going into a port. And we wanted to see if sonar could tell the officer of the deck what's going on, how fast they're going, whether they turn right or left, you know, for the starboard with the rudder. I can't talk. That's my English grammar. And they, and so we got behind and under it, and we did pretty good. Kind of stayed right there, followed them right into port. We could tell whether it was a starboard or a port tilt on the, you know, and how much they were changing their direction. And so, okay, it's good, because where we had been told they were keeping the, where they had the Pueblo, was mined on both sides of the entrance to the harbor. So you had to follow in on the channel or you were going to get blown up. So that's what we were practicing. And we did it like 3 or 4 times. Not bad. And we got pretty good at it. We took on, we had 25 SEALs that we had to take. Normally we only took 12, but we had to take 25 because that's how many they needed to go to secure the Pueblo, because they had to kill the North Koreans that were protecting it, and then protect our the sailors, the crew that was on there. And so we practiced taking that many and putting them out through the, that was why I was involved, is because that was my job, was to operate the escape chamber in the forward torpedo room. So we had to practice the quickest getting them out. And so some of the guys are big, some of the guys are small, so you can put 4 in, you can put 5 in. And so I had to figure out the quickest way to flood it, pressurize it, and get them out the door, get them out the hatch. And so we practiced all that stuff. We got pretty good at it. We got the times down. I don't remember exactly what they were, but it didn't take all that. It didn't take as long as we thought it was going to take. Then when we got back from the Med, we went into New London, and we got a refit. And the refit that we got when we went into, I had to go and check all of our external valves. Any valve that went to sea, I had to have them come down and check them. And, the ship fitters come down, so we had to check every sea valve. And we had to modify the forward, the area where you exit, because normally if we're going to exit the submarine in an escape, it's just you're out and you're up. They needed more room because they had gear that they had to pick up.
Yeah.
So we had to kind of push everything back and give them room for their gear. We're just south of the Caribbean islands, and the captain came on 1MC, which is he announced to everybody, a loudspeaker, basically is what it is. Goes to the captain said that on January 23rd, 1968, North Koreans captured the Pueblo. We're going to get them. Nobody knew that that's what we were doing, except 9 of us. We knew that that's what's happening.
Out of 83?
Out of 83, only 9 of us knew. And we were sworn to sign, we don't tell anybody. Because if the peep gets out, and the North Koreans know, we're all dead. So we're headed down, and we've topped off with fuel, and we were going to have a refueling in the South Pacific. And then we were headed up off the coast of Japan. We were going to pick up 25 SEALs, and we were going in to drop off the SEALs. We were turning around and coming out. Swift boats. Once the SEALs were there, swift boats were coming in to pick everybody up and bring them out.
And you were the escape vehicle?
No,
So
the swift boats were the escape. We were the method to secretly get the 25 SEALs onto the Pueblo.
Right.
Then we turn around and come out. We were like 3 or 4 miles north of the equator, and the captain, we got a message that group were not going. They had come to an agreement with the North Koreans and the U.S. The prisoners were going to be released in a few weeks. So we're trying to tell the captain, go, take it, go. We already got it all figured out. We're going to have this. Captain, turn around and go back. We went back into Norfolk. So I said goodbye.
Wow. And that was it? That was the last
That
trip?
was it. I got back into Norfolk. I went up to, got my papers off the boat and went to the hospital, and they, 3 or 4 days later, I was on the plane home.